everyone, and welcome back to the United Star. I'm Prasham Kothari, and I've got Karthik back on the channel once again. Karthik, of course, he runs All for United. He's always on there. Do check that channel out. We've tagged it, and the links are in the description. Karthik, it's so wonderful to have you back, and we're going to use sort of your coaching hat today as well, because we're going to talk tactics, whether the 4-3-3 is a realistic possibility with the squad we have. So thank you so much for coming along, Karthik, and over to you. 4-3-3, Samuel Luckhurst. Okay, I said over to you, but I'm talking. Sorry. Samuel Luckhurst, Dawson, Crafton, everyone's reporting we're going to play the 4-3-3. Do you think that's a good idea, first of all?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me back on. Pleasure to be here. I do think it's very it's both feasible and sensible. It's a formation that I've wanted us to use for a while now. It's a formation that Ole prefers. It was what we played when he first came in. It was a 4-3-3. It was sort of a diamond as well. But that holding midfielder is the key part of it. I think that's the most important thing. He wants to have one sitting midfielder with two players in front of him that can run. That's his vision. So I think that is what we've decided to go with, and I think we've tried it in pre-season so far. We've seen, Matic with Lingard and Pereira ahead of him so far, but obviously that's going to be different personnel when it comes to it. But I think that is what we're looking to do. Yeah.
Right. No, I agree with you. I think the 4-3-3 is definitely, you can see the likes of City and Liverpool have used it very successfully and won the Premier League, of course, with it. The last two winners have sort of used that formation, and City before that were using that as well. But do you think that we have that sort of CDM to sit on the base and play that pivot position? Because I personally obviously don't think Matic is the solution. He moves slower than Evergreen, that tanker that got stuck in the Suez Canal. He can't move anymore. So do you think it's realistically possible to play that formation without a Fernandinho or a Fabinho playing in that holding role?
I think I understand what you mean, but I also think that it doesn't have to be the same kind of player. So, for example, City use a Fernandinho where they'll push the two wing backs as inverted, so they'll come in and link up with Fernandinho and with the central midfielders, and they'll have Fernandinho sit in front of the two centre backs, almost making a triangle. Whereas Liverpool, their centre backs are more involved in possession. I mean, so are City's, but they're all more involved in possession, and the holding midfielder has a little bit more license to sort of shift and move. And you've also got within that two pretty similar CDMs in terms of they're both destroyers. They can progress the ball, but they're there to stop play. Whereas if you look at the kind of players we've been linked to now, me personally, I like my holding midfielder to be not this massive destroyer, but almost a small, agile player who can collect the ball, half turn, play it to the players in front of him, is smart off the ball, can read the game, can intercept, and he's quick enough to go and tackle. That's the kind of player I want United to sign. Now, if I say it now, you'll probably laugh at me, but a couple of years ago, I wanted that to be Harry Winks, because when he was in that kind of form, that's the kind of player I wanted. That's the kind of player I like Fred to be, but we've seen he's not up to that mark at the minute. So that's the kind of player I want us to look for, someone with a bit more of a footballing brain. My first choice for defensive midfield was Wilfred Ndidi, but that's not going to happen. So I look to my personal preference, which is this mold of a player, which is why I think we're being linked with a sort of Sal Niguez, with a Ruben Neves kind of player, not particularly the same as a Declan Rice or an Ndidi.
Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying, because this is the exact way I'd put it, is that you need a player that has a footballing brain that's able to read the game before the move happens. Because I've said it before and I'll say it again, that Van Dijk was a loss for Liverpool, but Fabinho going from CDM to centre back was a bigger loss, because they weren't able to stop that high press and press that Klopp likes. They weren't able to do that from midfield. Now, I feel that Fred and Scott McTominay have half the qualities we need and don't have the other half. So if we do play the 4-3-3 without any other signing, who do you think is the most likely person to fit that position?
Well, you mentioned McTominay and Fred have half the attributes that we need. I actually think we're filling one role with two players when we play McTominay and Fred. That's why we play that double pivot, because they both have an element of what we want from a number six. McTominay is the one that can sort of be a presence in the final third. Fred's the one with the energy and can go and tackle. So we combine those to almost make up for not having that one player. For me, if it was me picking the team, I'd have Fred. just because I think we can mold him into that single. A couple of years ago, he was in the kind of form where I was saying ridiculous things like he's having a better season than Kante, which he was at the time, but it was a silly thing to say. So there is a player there that we can use in that kind of a position. But I think Ollie will go with a McTominay just because he fits the kind of physique almost as Matic. So you can slot him in there and he can sort of adapt. But if we want to be serious, we do need to sign someone in that position. You might look at James Garner and go, he could play a part, but he's not ready just yet. And there's no one else in the academy that's sort of tailor-made for that role just yet. So at the minute, it looks like we have to look external.
I think there's another problem I have with Fred in the sense that I think he's not sort of he's very erratic. He's not got that ability like a Matic. A Matic in his prime is essentially what we need basically. He's not got that ability to just sit there and do nothing. When we have sort of Fred tries to do too much almost, and that's where I feel his downfall is that at times he just needs to keep it simple, just do what is asked of him, and he just doesn't do that. With McTominay, my problem is that he is a decent ball progressor. He is I feel he's a box-to-box player. He's somebody who could actually not replace because he's not as good as Paul Pogba, but he could actually play that position and actually get goals. I can see him getting about 8 or 9 goals in a season easily. And I think he can do that. I want a player like you're saying, like Saul, but I don't think that happens until someone like Pogba leaves.
Yeah, and I think it maybe not even just Pogba. I think we need to sell. Well, I know for a fact that United are looking to try and finish off the Trippier deal this week, but they want to try and sell someone before that's done so that they at least recover some of that fee, because we're spending a lot of money this window. Now, granted, we're getting deals done for a good price, but we're still spending a lot of money. And in order to balance the books almost, you have to sell some of the players, not even just because of quality. So I agree, we do need to sell someone in order to sign that kind of a player. Whether that's Paul Pogba or not, I think sales are expected.
Right. But let's say, for example, hypothetically, we were to get a CDM and Paul Pogba was to move out. I think that is something that is sort of being predicted and is sort of doing the rounds. Who would you then play on that left-hand side of a 3? Would you sort of go with a Van de Beek? Would you give McTominay a chance there? Or I don't see, would you give Lingard a chance there then?
It's a tough one. Potentially Lingard could get a chance. I'd like to think Van de Beek would get a chance, because I think part of it, I mean, we've seen that he's built up a little bit. Maybe that's part of what he needed that time for, maybe to improve physically to match that level. In terms of who fills that Pogba space, I think it probably would be Donny van de Beek. I mean, if anyone follows me, they'll know who I wanted, and we're definitely not going to get him because he's off to City. But
if anyone follows us as well, they know that. But there's too much heartache there. Let's not talk.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be Donny van de Beek. I think that's why he was signed. I think he was told that, sign for us now, and you'll get Paul Pogba's spot next season. And I think that's what he's going to get.
Mm-hmm. But some of the best football we played post lockdown was in that 4-3-3 formation with Matic as the pivot. Now, is that what OLE-BALL really looks like? Is that what it, if you want to call it OLE-BALL, is that what he really wants to do? And will he force it through even with Fred and McTominay, or one of them as sort of the base?
I think when you speak about OLE-BALL, I think it involves high press, it involves lots of attacking players on the pitch, and it involves progressing the ball quickly. And I think that what we're looking to build is that. I think the holding midfielder is part of that, and I think that's part of his vision. And I think hopefully if he gets that, we can sort of see us progress, because we have progressed, and we have built our squad to an extent where we can say, yes, this is Ollie's vision. And I think the missing pieces are maybe this backup right back to sort of give us a little bit of extra options. This number 6, so we can play a 4-3-3 with 2 advanced number 8s. And then next season we'll get that mad Norwegian bastard from Borussia Dortmund, and that'll be the vision complete. So yeah, I think it's coming into place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then we'd win the treble as well. But this is what I have problems with, is because we saw Ollie trying to play attacking football and everything last season at the beginning as well. And as soon as we lost 6-1 to Spurs, that was it. It was like Ollie just went into his shell against big teams and decided that basically he's going to Mourinho every game over there. If we can win 1-0, good enough. Otherwise, we take a nil on. Do you think that if we go with this 4-3-3 and don't sign a defensive midfielder, or even sign a defensive midfielder, we will see the 4-2-3-1 come out from time to time in the season?
I think you make a good point in terms of the switching in mentality almost, because I think that game he realised just how much work the squad needed. And I don't blame him for that. I think we switched to a counter-attacking style because, number one, the defence wasn't good enough. And number two, we didn't have the protection in front of the defence. Now, signing Rafael Varane, that's a big step. But now, if you sign him, you can get a little bit more adventurous with your midfielder. I think if we hadn't signed Varane, we'd probably be going to get a Declan Rice for that amount of money, or maybe a couple of 20 million more. But I think because we've signed as good a defender as Rafael Varane, we can get a bit more adventurous with our midfielder signing, which is why we're going for maybe a Camavinga, a Sal, a Ruben Neves, rather than a standout protection defensive midfielder. We're going for a more progressive, adventurous midfielder, which is exciting. But yeah, I think the 4-2-3-1, it can come out, and I think it will for certain games. And we will probably see McTominay and Fred in certain games as well. But this gives us a lot more options.
Right. And of course, I think having options in that depth is always good. But this is a sort of a little cynical, if I may say so. But what if the 4-3-3 doesn't work? And how much pressure do you think Oli has on his job right now? Because my question basically is this: if 4-3-3 isn't working, the 4-2-3-1, we know there is a more safer system. And if we lose the first few games out of the blocks, do you think he would go back to the 4-2-3-1, or do you think he has enough trust in his sort of position at the club to stick with the 4-3-3 and let it work out? Because it might take time for us to get used to the system.
I think he's under pressure anyway, because I think regardless of what we did in the summer, he needs a trophy this season to keep his job. I've said that a number of times. He needs to win something this season. But he's under even more pressure now because of the signings we've made. We've upped the expectations a little bit. People are turning around and going, hang on a minute, these lot need to be watched out for, because signing players like Jadon Sancho and Rafael Varane, that ups your level instantly. No matter what system you're playing, that ups the level. It's already an upgrade. So if you're then moving to a different system where, in theory, the system then ups your level, well, then you've got two upgrades in one. So that way, you've got to go and do something. So I think he is under pressure, and I don't think he will change his plans. He seems to be a manager that seems to be confident in what he thinks is right. So, for example, we've seen in games where, in a big game, he'll go with the McTominay and Fred, where people go, oh, no, maybe we should be attacking the opposition a bit more. But then he'll go, no, what I think is right, and we'll go and win. So I think he's got to be confident, and he'll be more confident now with the signings he's made and the options he has now off the bench as well. So it's exciting times, but he is under pressure, a lot of pressure.
And do you at all see the diamond coming back? Because Rashford is not going to be there, of course, we know that. So if we do get that sort of holding midfielder, we could possibly have Bruno or Sancho play in the hole with, Sancho play in the hole with Bruno and Pogba, Van de Beek on the left, and then Cavani and Mason up top. Do you think that is at all a possibility, especially when Rashford is not around?
The diamond was something that I thought we should have played last season. With the squad we had, I thought we should have gone for that as our main formation, because we didn't have wingers and we signed a lot of midfielders. But because Donny van de Beek didn't play, we carried on with what we had. This season, I don't think the diamond is what we should do. We've signed Jadon Sancho to give us options on the wing, and we've signed him to upgrade us a little bit more. So there'd be no point in playing him in the hole. He can play there, but there's no point. So no, I don't think we'll see the diamond. However, I do see us playing maybe two strikers every now and then. I think we can play a back three now that doesn't involve Luke Shaw in the three. We can play him as a wing back, and we have more protection. Instead of a Maguire, Shaw and Lindelof back three, you now have a Maguire, Varane and Lindelof back three, which instantly is, again, a level higher. And then you allow Luke Shaw a wing back, which gives you a lot more going forward. You have a Wan-Bissaka at right wing back, more options. And then in the middle, you can get a little bit more adventurous, because you're not going with a McTominay Fred, you're going with a potentially Van der Beek and whoever we sign, or a McTominay and a Pogba. So again, it gives us options, and options are the main thing that we need at the
I think you've sort of hit the nail on the head with sort of the point about the wing back, because that was something I was going to ask you. If we get Kieran Trippier, the 3-5-2 I think becomes a very potent weapon for us, because you've got Trippier and Luke Shaw, who are both fantastic going forward. And Trippier obviously has a good proven record of, crossing the ball, takes good corners as well. And I think with Maguire, Varane, and Lindelof, there's no excuse sort of in the defense anymore. You've got two proper leaders there, and Lindelof is not bad. He is a good Premier League level defender. There's no question about that in my mind. So the 3-5-2 definitely becomes an option, but I don't think it's an option if Van Bissaka is the only right back at the club, because I feel that Van Bissaka is sort of caught in this conundrum where he doesn't know whether he should defend and attack, and then that's why he's making a lot of defensive errors. I hope the Sancho sort of coming into the right wing position solves that a bit, so that relieves a little pressure from him. But I don't think that. Let me ask you this: in terms of sort of the diamond, I thought the last season we didn't have a CDM to play it, and I only think we can play it if we get a CDM. So I want to ask you this: does our team look better with, let's say, Van de Beek or Lingard on the left hand side of midfield, Bruno and Saul, or does it look better with, let's say, Fred, Pogba, and Bruno?
I would say the midfield of Fred, Pogba, and Bruno potentially could be better, simply because I think with Fred in front of a Maguire and Varane defence, I would feel a little bit more confident because that gives him a little bit more freedom. And he's got the leadership behind him to say, you step, we're fine. You step, you go do your thing, link it up. And you've also got two centre-backs who can play out from the back, who can go, you sit, I'm going to go, and I'll go and play it. And they go, okay, sure. That could work a little bit better. Whereas if you have a Saul and a Van de Beek, it's not lower quality, but it is as well, because they're not the same kind of players. Paul Pogba and Bruno Fernandes as two free-roaming eights has the potential to be one of the best midfielders in the world. Just full stop. If you're not limiting Paul Pogba by playing him deeper or playing him out wide and giving him that free role on the left-hand side and Bruno a free role with Sancho and Rashford or Sancho and whoever, instantly your levels are going up again. So tactically, it gives you a bit more freedom, and I think just the dynamic of Fred and an energy guy who to clean up behind those two, as well as Bruno, who likes to track back anyway, so you can offset Pogba a little bit, and then you've got Varane and Maguire. I think that balance works a little bit better.
Right. I sort of agree with you, because I personally, I mean, if you want to win something, you need a player like Paul Pogba there. He is an absolute match winner on his day. He can turn things around with just a few passes or dribbles. And I think if you're building a world-class team, you obviously need the likes of Bruno Fernandes, Paul Pogba, Jadon Sancho, all of these guys to be firing. So I do agree with you. I don't think we should let go of Pogba. And even if it might take one more season to sign a CDM, probably makes sense to wait it out. But so just to wrap this up, finally, I want to ask you two questions. Number one is that if we do switch to a 4-3-3, is this something you're expecting across competitions? Because my opinion or my view is that the 4-3-3 might work in the Premier League, but in the Champions League, he might switch to a 4-2-3-1 against the bigger teams. And in the FA Cup, he might switch to a 4-2-3-1 as well, in order to give the sort of players a little bit of a rest.
That's an interesting question. I think you can play the 4-3-3 in Europe as well, because you've got the better standard of player now. If you were going in with the squad of last season, and you asked me, can we play a 4-3-3 in Europe? I'd say probably not, because I don't feel confident in our ball progression, because in the Champions League, you've got to think it's not as high a tempo as the Premier League. It's a little bit more tactical, which means you need to progress the ball a lot quicker, and you've got to shift it left to right. One of the most frustrating things for me about United in the last few years is when we're in possession against a low block team, we're far too slow in moving the ball left to right. The very basics of breaking down a team that sit off you is move the ball left and right really quickly, open up the gaps, and then play through it, which is what we don't do enough. So I think now with the personnel that we have, if we sign a 6 and then we have the 2 8s in front, they can pick up good positions, they can play on the half turn, we can play it quicker. And I feel a little bit more confident. But I do understand what you mean in terms of adapting. And I think we do that anyway. Ollie's the kind of manager who will adapt to who he's playing. So if we come up against a Barcelona, a PSG, he will change the shape. But I think he'd favour the 4-3-3 and switch to a back 3 rather than switch from a 4-3-3 to a 4-2-3-1. Unless it's someone where you think, okay, McTominay and Fred have to start. In that case, he'd go for the 4-2-3-1.
Right, that makes sense. And I kind of agree with you also in sort of the sense that we have the depth to try these options out this time around. And that option of 2 8s is destructive. And I think the best example that I think I pointed out last year as well, this is before Liverpool sort of hit that sort of emergency break they did last season. I think the best part about, I mean, obviously there's nothing good about watching Liverpool, but just from a footballing perspective, the way they move the ball from side to side is just unbelievable how quickly they do it. And it's not always the short passes, two or three, they swap sort of the long pass as well. And it's just fantastic to watch. And I think that is something that if we can inculcate, it'll be much easier to break teams down, to sort of make them dance. And now we have two players in when Rashford is back, or Martial and Sancho, to hold that width. I think we didn't have that before. And Greenwood sort of, whoever played on the right, tried to keep coming inwards. So there was no one to hold the width and switch play to. Wan-Bissaka is not particularly good going forward. So I think now we have that option. So my final question to you is this: with the 4-3-3, what do you think is a realistically achievable trophy sort of that we can win this season?
It depends. Again, if we sign a number 6, then it then depends on, you know, injuries and things like that. But on paper, if we sign a good holding midfielder, you have to be confident to win 1, maybe 2 trophies this season and challenge for a title. So I'd be quietly confident. I think now, even now, I'm confident. I'm always confident. I think we can go and do something. I think we will win a trophy this season with the squad that we have, barring any injuries. But if we go and sign a 6, and that way you've got your squad to a point where your only weakness is up front, and that's going to get addressed next season. And then to upgrade in other positions, you're then looking at the small details, which is a good thing. You're then looking at maybe Luke Shaw and going, oh, actually, we could do a little bit better than Luke Shaw. Maybe we can tweak something there. Or you go at the centre-back and go, actually, Harry Maguire might now be our weakest centre-back in the first 2. So let's go and get another one. And that way, you're making the marginal gains, and then you're at a level where your squad's almost like the Manchester City squad. So to answer your question, I think if we sign someone, we are in a position where we could win any of the trophies that are available. Where we are right now, you win 1 or 2 of them, probably not the Premier League, but you can win 1 or 2 of the others. Whereas if you get the 6, you could win any of them, and you're a lot more confident.
Right. Thank you so much, Karthik, for doing this. I think it's been brilliant talking to you, very insightful for me as well. So thank you so much for coming along. Guys, do check out All for United. It's linked in the sort of title as well. It's in the description. And give Karthik a follow on Twitter as well. Do subscribe to the United Star, like the video, share the video, and we'll be building up to the season with a lot more exciting guests coming on, like Karthik, and hopefully we'll be talking about a title challenge in the next 6 months as well. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye.